Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Clockworks Chatter. In this episode, I'd like to talk about danger missions. What are they? Are they really as dangerous as advertised? Are they really worth going through, and what do they mean for the replayability of the game? I think these are all very important questions that I could probably answer today, especially knowing that I've finished 2 out of 4 danger missions and made videos on them, and I've had experience playing with them in the past. Even though I really don't need to describe what a danger mission is, it might still help to give a bit of a basis of what they are to help elaborate more of the later thoughts within this video. So, what is a danger mission? A danger mission is a mission that can be done daily, but is significantly more difficult than your other daily prestige missions and the Clockworks. It provides players with a more interesting and difficult experience compared to, say, Firestorm Citadel and Dreams and Nightmares, as those are often repetitious, while not having to fork up the money for the paywall that is a shadow layer. So with that, we can now use that as a basis to make some of our points off of for later in the episode. Now, this would be the point where I would talk about the individual danger missions, but I'm pretty sure most of us have at least played through all of them at least once, so there's no real point in going into that. So we'll talk about my first point. Are they really as dangerous as advertised? Because I know this is a very strong point of contention within a lot of the community. I know back when the game used to be relatively new, the whole consensus was, oh, Ghost in the Machine is the most difficult because we don't know how to deal with shock. Now the consensus is generally, oh yeah, it's Heart of Ice because Fiends and it's completely annoying to deal with. And, well, that's actually not the point of contention. The point of contention is within discussing the other three because it can vary widely based on their experiences, their gear, or whether if they just like the mission or not. Because people will just say, oh, you can wear Dragon Scale Mail and completely trivialize Compound 42, and for them, that's why it's the easiest. And with that, I completely agree, but for someone like me who doesn't have Dragon Scale Mail, it ranks significantly higher because the mission becomes quite difficult without that. Or, if we're talking on a manner of experience, then for me, Legion of Almire is the easiest, because I have the most experience with it, and can easily deal with the enemies that are present within the mission. For some people, that's not the case, and so it ranks higher on the difficulty scale for them because they're not used to all those different enemy types being clustered together and don't know what to prioritize first to make that fight within the mission a hell of a lot easier. Because of that, I think it's important to judge these based off of like an average player's skill level without taking into account of either a certain player's skill level or a certain player's gear. That way we give a bit of a more fair analysis to this. So I think there are 3 things that can help us decipher really how difficult these danger missions are. And they would be enemy fairness, level design, and special mechanics. Because they all play a major impact on these danger missions very differently. Let's talk about the last one, special mechanics. Each danger mission has their own set of special mechanics that are mostly tied to them. Some of them do show up in later missions or in shadow layers, but for the most part it's specific to that of the shadow layer. So I think for this point, I think every danger mission, with the exception of Legion of Almire, does this really well and makes the level a lot more interesting because it adds new gameplay elements or adds on to existing gameplay elements to either make the fighting either really intricate or really difficult. And the only reason why Almire tends to fall flat on this one is because, well, there really isn't a lot of special mechanics to it. Really, it's more so in the enemies than rather anything special with the level design or new interactables. And so because of this, I'd like to think Legion of Almire is a very mechanically easy dungeon compared to the others, because it doesn't add anything new and actually rips a lot of other mechanics from the other levels within the game, such as tombstones from graveyards and Shadowfire from Vanaduke even. But interestingly enough, despite being a graveyard mission, in a sense, it actually removes the mechanic specific to graveyards, that being the Phantom. And I think that might be due to difficulty reasons, but that doesn't stop the other levels from having something similar, so that kind of brings in the question, why was Phantoms removed actually? Because in both Ghost of the Machine and Heart of Ice, they both have souls, which effectively act as like multiple mini phantoms chasing you. And it would definitely make Legion of Almire significantly more difficult, even if it was just specific to the first floor, because the first floor, you're literally just going through a graveyard with like, I don't know, just a few new enemies. It's not that difficult. So, on that, I have to say Legion of Almire is mechanically the easiest danger mission. And I'd have to say the most mechanically difficult danger mission would be Compound 42, because a lot of mechanics actually interact with each other in many different ways. You've got Toxo-Oilers, which drop poison oil all over the floor, which can be interacted with in multiple ways. If you step over them, you're poisoned. If there's fire nearby, then it gets caught on fire and creates an area of effect for a little while that sets you on fire, and I'm also pretty sure it still poisons you. You've got fires, spewers all throughout the level. You've got shadow fire and water bubbles that you have to throw to get rid of the shadow fire, which can still set the toxic oils on fire. You've got the polyps that spawn new enemies, throw down more toxic oil, can also be lit on fire. There's so many things that can be interacted with mechanically in this level that I think it easily can bombard a player, as it did with me in my Compound 42 video multiple times. Moving on to the next point, I like to believe that the 4 danger missions all have fun and creative level designs, at least in some part of the mission. So like for Legion of Almire, there's a really cool but a little silly area where you have to go through on the 2nd floor where you have to retrieve totems and go put them on the little pedestal. You know, that's fine and dandy, but you got to worry about zombies chasing you, and each area is segmented off in a way, so it's like a maze, but you can open them up, and it sort of becomes like Bomberman in a sense. And I think that's really cool and a fun way to shift up gameplay, even if it is not really that difficult. But I think the danger mission that actually ends up having the meanest sort of level design is Heart of Ice. And for that, it's because a lot of the arenas and areas you go through in Heart of Ice tend to be really small. 2 great examples of this would be on the end of the 1st floor, where you end up having to fight 6 howitzers and 6 chambers, where you have to fight each howitzer to open up a new area. But the problem is that a lot of the howitzers will end up ganging up on you if you leave all the gates open, and there's just a lot of enemies, and these chambers tend to be small, so they'll also just tend to like cluster you in together, and especially the Trojans, where if you're on the sideways where you can actually move between the top and bottom layer without having to open a gate, they're actually just big enough to the point where you can't get behind them. So it ends up leaving you having to go to a chamber, deal with a howitzer and a Trojan at the same time. Another example of this in Heart of Ice is right at the end before you get to the fight with Malos. Now that arena is pretty big, but it gets really, really claustrophobic if you do not deal with the crystals and the barrier, because all the enemies will just start surrounding you and absolutely obliterate you. I actually had this happen to me when I was recording Heart of Ice, which that's a video down the line, don't expect that anytime soon. Yeah, no, that was easily the worst room for me within the danger mission. They can really, really hunker you down in specific areas if you do not clean the arena right. So regarding all that, I don't think there's any specific danger mission that has like the easiest level design, but there definitely is a danger mission that I'd say has the hardest level design, and that would be Heart of Ice, simply because there's a lot of arenas that can get kind of claustrophobic and can really start to overwhelm you if you're not really regarding your surroundings well. And for the last point, enemy fairness, this one can get actually split into 2 instead of like having 3 categories. And it's all based on really the difficulty of the enemies you're facing. So like with Legion of Almire, you're fighting a lot of zombies and howitzers and cats, but they still end up mixing in a lot of sort of more difficult enemies, but you can still generally fight them with ease. I think Compound 42 actually has the weakest enemy fairness, or well, I should say the easiest enemy fairness, in the fact that slimes really aren't that hard to deal with. It's just, this is gonna sound weird, but I don't understand how people have problems with slimes. I think they're one of the easier enemies to deal with, frankly. And gremlins also in that mission aren't too terribly difficult as well. Every once in a while you'll come across a thwacker or a mortifier that'll get annoying to deal with, but overall it's not terribly difficult. It's really more so in the level design and the mechanics of the mission that make it difficult. So that's why I think those two have the more fair enemies, while Ghost in the Machine and Heart of Ice actually both have really difficult or annoying enemy fairness, and where they're really unfair with the types of enemies they use. Ghost in the Machine does a really great example of this, where they just love spamming the absolute fucking hell out of Mechanites, and albeit, yeah, it's a danger mission, yeah, but they could sprinkle in some more, like, Scuttlebots, or, I mean, even, like, a Lumber, just to spruce up variety, but it's just Mechanites. Making guns, with the exception of, like, punch guns in Antique, was kind of useless. Unless you know how to skedaddle your way around the Mechanite shield. And so, that, I'd say, is on the higher end, but I think Hoi still takes it because there's just so many elite enemies that they use. They use Grievers. Devilites are always annoying to deal with. The combination of reducing area that you can walk around in with the Chromalisks, because they have they have a small AoE that they can plop down on the ground. Wolvers with their extreme high mobility. Everything either has great mobility or great area of effect, which is very annoying to deal with, considering, as I said earlier, the level design is very unfair and small in that mission, so it's really hard to maneuver your way around the enemies and deal with them in an effective manner. Alongside with the enemies just being really annoying to fight because of their mobility, and tending to be on the tankier side thanks to the beasts being that way and Grievers being elite enemies. And also with the fact that a Trojan, or Trojans tend to spawn quite often throughout the mission as well. So with that in mind, I think the general consensus that Heart of Ice is the most difficult danger mission is a very understandable and reasonable one to believe, considering that even though it does not have the mechanical depth of that of Compound 42, what mechanics do exist within the mission work really well in conjunction with how difficult the level design can be at times, and how tough the enemies are. As for the other three danger missions, I definitely would say they're more on the difficult side, but they don't reach the same difficulty level as that of Heart of Ice and a Shadow Layer. But that's not to say that you can't master these danger missions. With some time and practice, you will definitely become better at them. So, are they really worthy of the danger mission name? Well, it's possible. They're like a nice in-between of that of, like, general Spiral Knights content and that of Heart of Ice and Shadow Layers. But if you want my personal opinion on how I would rank the danger missions, I would say that Compound 42 would probably be in the bottom. Yes, it's a very easy mission in terms of its level design and its enemy fairness. So most of it has to come through its mechanics, which indefinitely is mechanically difficult. But you can completely trivialize that with Dragon Scale Mail, which, because of that, I have to put it at the bottom. Next, I would say would be Legion of Valmire, because it's not a very mechanically interesting level. There really isn't a lot going for it, especially when it comes to the status ailments. I mean, there's fire in the first level, and then there's 2 enemies that cause curse in the second. You're not going to have to worry about remedy capsules, and so because of that, you can actually focus more on, like, barriers and potions to help you win the fight, especially freeze barriers, which will become immensely useful when fighting the Shadow Guards at the end. It's not a very hard mission to actually master as well. Not master, but, like, get really good at. I myself have gotten to the point where I don't even need to spark for the mission. So, for that, I'd have to put it in third. And then for second place, it would be Ghost of the Machine, because this is where the level design and the enemy fairness start to ramp up, because they love spamming the hell out of those Mechanites. And so this is where I would see a player of an average skill level start to struggle a little bit. And even equipping a lot of shock resistance is not going to help, because it's only going to really make you really resistant to that of Wisps, who won't affect you after you've gained enough shock resistance. Because Mechanites will still inflict you, if I'm correct based on my video, 5 seconds of shock, which that's not a lot of time, but one good zap could still put you in a detriment position, because you're stun locked essentially for a second. And so enemies, if they're like mid charge or mid dash to attack you, that could spell disaster for you. So now on to my next point. Are the danger missions really worth doing? Well, if you're looking for something to do other than Vanna and Dreams and Nightmares, if you're looking for a challenge, yeah, I'd say it's worth it. Especially Heart of Ice, because they offer quite the challenge compared to that of just doing the same repetitious grind, which you eventually learn and master. And so it's a nice change of pace because it's also adding a lot of different mechanics that you wouldn't normally see in the Clockworks. If you're doing it for the monetary reward for crowns and or other loot such as orbs, sparks, even radiance, no, it's fucking piss poor, I hate to say it. And prestige, prestige only offers a badge change visually and that's it, so yeah, no, the rewards are not worth it. But with that, I think danger missions are a nice addition to Spiral Knights. They allow those who are looking for more interesting and difficult content something to do, without impacting on Spiral Knights' base gameplay, of course. This is because the rewards are negligible compared to those of boss missions, Clockworks runs, or even just missions that offer more rewards. But even though I think better rewards would be nice for danger missions, it's probably better that they're put into this category with worse rewards for this very sake, because if you try incorporating them into the main story, it's going to be way too difficult for the new player to try and go through on their first few attempts, because the difficulty spike absolutely jumped up. Especially with Heart of Ice. Good lord, you know how many people would probably quit just trying to do this mission? It'd be insane. Anyways, that wraps up today's episode of Clockworks Chatter. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have anything you'd like to say in the comments down below, please do so. And tell me, what would you rank as the easiest to most difficult danger missions? Are they similar to mine? Do they match up with what I've said here in the video? Please do so. Leave a comment down below. I'll read and respond to every comment. I love doing that. Because as a small content creator, that I take joy in seeing comments on my videos. As for the state of Clockworks Chatter, I want to try and start uploading a bit more regularly, especially with just SK content in general, because I did kind of take a break a bit midway through November through December. There we go. So I want to be a bit more regular with that, so expect to see more content out soon. But with that, we've arrived at the Clockworks Terminal. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'd like to bid you all farewell. Goodbye.